Have you ever experienced visiting a state and thinking, seriously, I could permanently reside here forever? Right. Well, individuals who genuinely reside in these locations would appreciate having a conversation. Today, we're examining the top 10 states that are wonderful to visit, but awful to actually live. The destinations where tourists pour in, capture countless selfies, and abandon traffic congestion, housing crises, and locals questioning why their rental costs exceed a year's supply of oceanfront margaritas. From Florida's amusement park mayhem to Hawaii's island paradise complications, let's discover which states are surviving through tourism and suffering consequently. Let's examine this. Number 10. South Carolina. South Carolina provides classic Southern hospitality, shorelines, historical plantation tours, and historic communities. It attracts legions of vacationers searching for sunshine, heritage, and seaside retreats. But residents frequently complain about the concealed expenses, and they possess a lot of them, both concealed costs and grievances. For travelers, it's scenic streets draped in Spanish moss, seaside dunes, resort lifestyle, marshlands. For residents, seaside communities encounter property pressures, secondary vacation homes, short-term rentals, infrastructure demands like sewage systems, roadways, and stormwater drainage, and fluctuating seasonal economic swings. The friction between maintaining local character and accepting expansion is perpetual for numerous smaller seaside communities. The less attractive aspect involves managing visitor tourism with residents' requirements. Emergency response services get stretched on heavy traffic weekends. Municipal governments occasionally postpone capital investments in visitor zones. Meanwhile, inland communities deteriorate. When dusk descends, the fiscal rhythm tied to visitor tourism can leave many residents pondering, do we actually reside here or just serve here? I was raised in a seaside tourist community not excessively distant down the shoreline from Venice Beach and Santa Monica, California. We didn't experience it as severely as they suffered, but on Independence Day weekends throughout the entire summer. And because the pleasant weather most of springtime, and it was absolutely brutal, especially if you're a native. My individual perspective, the primary concern besides the traffic congestion is intoxicated non-residents that believe they control the place. Now in South Carolina, the most popular places for tourists and the residents that experience the most suffering will be located in Charleston, Myrtle Beach, Hilton Head, and many of the seaside regions, the Low Country essentially. Now, even though South Carolina doesn't experience that numerous visitors, approximately 20 million annually, when polled, 61% of residents stated they would prefer to witness fewer tourists. Number 9. Louisiana. Louisiana depends heavily on heritage tourism, jazz festivals, historical French Quarter tours, bayou swamp expeditions, Mardi Gras. For travelers, the state provides vibrant music, cuisine, architecture, and a distinctive cultural blend. For numerous locals, though, the responsibility of maintaining the tourist's facade is profound. I've attended many different celebrations in my lifetime. You understand. Traveled to Las Vegas numerous times, all various kinds of beach festivals, cruise vessels. There is absolutely nothing more I wouldn't dare. It's absolutely wild. The wildest celebrations I've personally been to are at Mardi Gras to the extent where you sense your life's in jeopardy at certain moments. When you're in your 20s and you believe you're going to survive forever, that's one certain matter. But when you begin approaching your 40s, thinking, someone strikes me across the skull here, I might never fully recover. But the density of tourism in urban areas like New Orleans means substantial pedestrian traffic, overburdened public safety services, exaggerated commercial rents, and a certain expense of maintaining heritage that the municipality must financially subsidize. Districts are frequently placed under substantial strain, either because of being over-touristed or they're completely ignored. Municipal infrastructure systems, from public transit to waste sanitation, appears overburdened during festival season. In numerous instances, the income from tourism doesn't consistently filter down into public education, affordable housing, or structural equity. Rather, it sustains a hospitality tourism economy. When live music diminishes and tropical storms strike, the regional financial system, which has been organized around guided tours and special events, can collapse onto truly difficult periods. And for numerous states this current season, it's been rather challenging. visitor traffic is significantly decreased. They're not listed on this ranking, but Las Vegas, strangely enough, I believe they'd surely be on this ranking for certain. They're currently struggling. But in Louisiana, residents often discover themselves acting as guardians of a visitor brand rather than the beneficiaries. 65% of residents report they could definitely go for fewer tourists. Louisiana experiences approximately 42.6 million visitors every year. The most common locations, obviously, New Orleans bayous and cultural tourism activities like festivals. Number 8. Alaska. Alaska is often romanticized as the last frontier. That idealized image attracts visitors but simultaneously intensifies the burden on remote settlements that are isolated and sparsely inhabited. Now, they experience it severely. They barely receive any visitors compared to other territories because they're so extremely remote. But they just simply have such a remarkably limited population. It exhausts these people. Travelers witness glaciers, marine mammals, harsh terrain, angling camps, backcountry. Local inhabitants shoulder the expense. In isolated communities, every single visitor arrival demands infrastructure that must be overdeveloped for maximum capacity, but remains underutilized off-season. Harbors, terminals, water transport, waste disposal facilities, all must be properly dimensioned for periodic surges. Furthermore, community identity can sense threat when visitor industry is essentially the sole method the community generates income. And for many of these settlements, that's precisely what's occurring. It somewhat alters the rhythm, the local character, and the identity because they're transitioning towards meeting tourist demands. I've spoken to numerous residents when I've traveled on vacation ships to Alaska. I've traveled on approximately 6 trips to Alaska, and I always consistently converse with residents when possibly. And because of what I perform for my career, this YouTube platform, I inquire them about various topics. What's it actually like off-season here, and how do you manage financially? One primary thing is most inhabitants will depart because they're only temporary workers, so they're genuinely not permanent inhabitants and the individuals remaining. It's virtually an abandoned settlement. Skagway is a prime example. I spoke to an elderly gentleman immediately following the pandemic, and he was pleased to witness everyone returned. He resided there his complete existence. I believe he stated he relocated there around 2nd or 3rd grade. His parent worked for the train company. When he was first year in secondary school, they actually entered the school room and asked, "Does somebody desire to drop school and begin working for the train company?" He lifted at his arm and off he departed. But he's a former railroad worker, so he could manage there financially. And he's received a decent retirement and everything, but he stated many businesses struggle. Throughout the health crisis, the establishments, the neighborhood eateries, they operated on a rotation where one would remain operational one period, another would be operating the next period, so they could all be generating some income. Therefore, all voluntarily shut down operations, and all residents, particularly retired individuals that had pensions arriving in, would dine at eateries just to somewhat maintain the community surviving. In previous years, Alaska has attempted to restrict the number of vacation ships that would arrive into harbors because they simply exhaust the communities too significantly. Now they're in a difficult position because that's, as I mentioned, how many communities survive financially is the vacation ships. Alaska only receives approximately 2.6 million visitors annually, and they're all arriving for warm months for vacation ships and federal parks and nature expeditions. That's not an amusement park. Therefore, they receive a few thousand people with each vessel, and most communities only experience a limited number of vessels every period, and peak season is genuinely only approximately 3 or 4 months. 66% of Alaska's population would prefer fewer visitors. Number 7, California. Now, this is the one I was raised in, and I was raised in one of the smaller seaside communities, as I mentioned previously, and visitor industry begins to exhaust you, especially when you consider we weren't too far from Hollywood Entertainment, Santa Monica Beach, approximately an hour's drive from Disneyland, and Knott's Berry Farm, Magic Mountain, directly up the road. I've witnessed my share of tourists. You might contend California is too big to be awful to reside in. But the density of tourism in regions like Yosemite, Big Sur coastal area, federal parks, and seaside communities means that large portions of the state experience all the negative drawbacks without equally shared advantages. Travelers witness the stunning shorelines, national park attractions, vineyard country, Hollywood entertainment, deserts, giant trees. Residents experience traffic disasters in places that shouldn't be receiving congestion, like Big Sur and the various seaside communities. You have excessive parking difficulties, increasing housing expenses in vacation towns, and the friction between protecting natural zones and accepting visitors. The state government constantly prefers to indicate that we generate billions annually in visitor revenue in California, which is excellent for regional financial systems, but it doesn't truly account for what it's causing to the environment. Pathway deterioration, environmental contamination, wildlife danger, water scarcity. It's everything that gets tested during visitor periods. And for California, that's most of the year. One of the largest issues California experiences nowadays, especially in seaside communities and better urban areas, is the vacation property owners and short-term rental industry. Apart from all other factors that property is getting inflated in California, this is just another spike in California's property grave. If you ever desire to witness a community that's been somewhat damaged, is Anaheim, California, where you'll discover Disneyland and all remaining attractions and establishments that accompany Disneyland. They label it the Disney Resort of Anaheim. You understand, you don't just have Disneyland, you have all these specialty eateries up and down the road, and it's like Las Vegas without games at some places. California experiences approximately 250 million domestic and foreign visitors every year. 71% of individuals surveyed in California stated they would prefer fewer tourists. Number 6. Washington. Washington is a remarkable example. Natural beauty, urban areas, islands, forests. Seattle is an international attraction. The Olympic Peninsula and Cascade Range attract multitudes of wilderness enthusiasts, but residing permanently under that influence exposes friction and much of it. Ferry trips, coastal inlets, moderate jungles, alpine backcountry, metropolitan lifestyle. For residents, expensive housing in metropolitan regions, excessive property costs in vacation settlements, and public facilities that are frequently built to satisfy visitor requirements more than local purpose. The Pacific Coast weather additionally strains transit and storm-resistant systems. Countryside communities near entrance areas often struggle. They sense torn between maintaining what attracted tourists, the landscape and tranquility, and providing amenities that tourists expect. Tourist surges stress internet systems, highways, and emergency capabilities. Certain residents, particularly in Seattle region, claim there's specific neighborhoods they don't visit because there's excessive visitors. That's one of the largest concerns. Now, Seattle is a disaster with visitor industry because they have identical vacation vessel situation. They have harbors directly there in Seattle. Those visitors arrive a day beforehand, remain a day afterward. Therefore, you experience this surge, this assembly system of individuals boarding vessels. That complete coastal region is a disaster during vacation period. Been there numerous occasions, all the route up to Pike Place. And afterward you arrive to the Space Needle, and that's not as bad, but it can become rather congested. Now, the places you're going to experience the majority of tourists is Seattle, Puget Sound Waterway, Olympic Peninsula, and the Cascade Range. They experience approximately 25.9 million visitors annually, and, additionally, similar to California, 71% of residents claim they'd prefer fewer visitors. Number 5. Arizona. Arizona is remarkable for its distinctive terrain. You have the Grand Canyon, Monument Valley formations, Sedona, the desert vegetation. That's what draws visitors. But the identical severe climate makes maintaining regional communities more difficult under mass tourism. For tourists, you have spectacular views, trail walking, sun-baked landscapes, arid beauty. For residents, water shortage, temperature stress, public facility burden in communities adjacent to federal parks, and rapidly increasing real estate costs. In regions near vacation destinations, residential housing often transitions to brief rentals, forcing out permanent residents. Another issue is deterioration and upkeep, when pathways, highways, observation platforms, and entrance routes must accommodate a surge of tourists daily. Municipal governments shoulder upkeep expenses that frequently surpass the limited regional tax base. The attraction of revenue from lodging and hospitality establishments may alter community priorities away from sustainable neighborhood structures. Yeah, absolutely, it's a serious issue, especially when you consider the short-term rental industry. You have many individuals operating vacation rental properties. That simply removes houses out of the regional market for local residents. Arizona experiences approximately 45 million visitors annually, and approximately 71% of them hope they would cease or minimum some of them. Number 4. Colorado. Colorado has transformed into a casualty of its inherent scenery. Its peaks, winter resorts, pathways, and federal parks attract countless visitors every period. That surge assisted regional economies, but it simultaneously deteriorates them in gradual accumulating methods. From the tourist perspective, Colorado provides fresh atmosphere, tall mountains, unspoiled paths, and mountain lifts. Residents, though, struggle with housing shortage in alpine communities, a dual labor system. You have hospitality versus necessary workers and overburdened systems, your highways, your transportation, your mobile reception. The more visitor industry generates employment, the more it increases disparity. Hospitality workers cannot manage to reside where they labor. Furthermore, nature is under stress. Heavily used paths, water requirement, wildfire danger, and vehicle congestion all increase with pedestrian traffic. Managing accessibility with conservation becomes a continuous challenge. The burden of tourist demands can occasionally push out the opinions of permanent residents and development choices. Now, all visitor activity happens on the western side where the Rocky Mountains are. Very little happens in the eastern region. It's somewhat level and nothing there. 72% of Colorado's residents would prefer fewer tourists. Colorado experiences approximately 95.4 million visitors per year. Number 3. Tennessee. Tennessee is a type of inland tourism powerhouse. The Great Smoky Mountains, Dollywood, music tourism in Nashville and Memphis all channel steady visitors. This influx is both a benefit and burden. Tourists often witness maintained lodges, welcoming small communities, music festivals, and beautiful routes. Local residents witness the extremely contrasting reality. Surges in congestion on countryside routes not constructed for heavy capacity, tourism zones that control real estate use, and hospitality positions that don't compensate sufficiently to maintain individuals locally. When your economy is heavily tilted towards hospitality, individuals who were raised in the state occasionally sense forced out or compelled to relocate to metropolitan centers. Municipal governments in numerous regions must preserve highways, vehicle lots, waste capacity, emergency services, and these must expand for tourist influxes, but their tax base remains limited. Therefore, the expense of maintaining tourism often lands on regional residents. The periodic rhythm additionally means prosperity and decline. Communities expand with visitors, then contract afterward, leaving facilities underutilized most of the year. Tennessee experiences approximately 147 million visitors annually, generating approximately $31 billion in direct visitor expenditures, but 73% of residents would prefer fewer visitors. Number 2. Hawaii. Now, this ranking somewhat shocked me, but I'll explain later. Hawaii operates in a type of ongoing paradox. The islands survive by the visitor industry, and yet simultaneously the identical industry threatens to deplete them. Tourists arrive for the idealized, unspoiled shorelines, welcoming hospitality, lava landscapes, the entire island experience. Most depart with souvenirs and skin burns. Several depart with shock at how extensively the state suffers under its inherent popularity. For local residents, the tourism economy means excessive housing costs, overwhelmed public facilities, and utilities that are severely stressed. Water, trash, transit. As the Hospitality Authority reports, traffic complaints are constant, even among visitors themselves, not just exclusively residents. Numerous inhabitants discover it challenging to maintain a regular quality of living when so extensive of the financial system and governmental attention is directed towards visitor satisfaction. Additionally, the environmental ecosystem is delicate, and this is the largest attraction to Hawaii is the environmental ecosystem. Therefore, that maintains visitors arriving, but it's simultaneously degrading the environmental ecosystem and local heritage. The conflict is constant. Is the government protecting the islands for local residents or maintaining them as a display for visitors? The regional burden of that conflict is substantial. Hawaii is in a difficult position. That's how they generate income, but at the identical time, it's destroying their quality. Their housing costs are absurd for many various factors, but one is short-term rentals, vacation properties, and obviously, it's distant from the continent. Yeah, absolutely, that is a difficult situation. Regardless, they only experience approximately 10 million visitors, somewhat over, which isn't much, but it's also an extremely small territory. 77% of residents claim they'd prefer much fewer visitors. All right, before we get to number 1, if you're thinking about moving to any one of these touristy states, there's a link for a website called Home and Money in the description area below. They can get you in touch with a real estate agent anywhere in the country. All right, on to number 1. And number 1, Florida. Florida is a textbook paradox. Heaven for tourists, an intense environment for local residents. Visitors inundate the amusement parks of Orlando, shorelines of Miami, Florida Keys, and countless vacation communities. The government administration relies heavily on visitor income, sometimes at the sacrifice of public facilities, ecological well-being, and community quality. For tourists, Florida provides sunshine, spinning coasters, tropical surf, and inexpensive travel. For residents, that identical surge means jammed highways, rapidly increasing property taxes, and a real estate economy increasingly tilted towards brief rentals rather than permanent security. The strain to serve visitor money means municipal administration occasionally favors visual appearances or tourist zones over substantial investment in education, transportation, or public services. The burden intensifies when periodic cycles conflict with environmental danger. Tropical sea elevation increase, water purity problems, and increasing insurance expenses compound that pressure. The visitor revenue can vanish with the next hurricane. For anybody residing in Florida permanently, 2 excessive seasons of this can be a relationship breaker, and they relocate back to like South Carolina or Georgia. Yeah, absolutely, that's another state in a difficult position. Visitor industry is nearly vital to Florida in a sense. I mean, honestly, I don't believe they're generating revenue from Florida man internet jokes. Florida experiences approximately 144 million visitors annually, and approximately 78% of residents would prefer much fewer than that number. All right, that's today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you got some information out of it. Now go out. Have a great day.